Hello and welcome to a very special video that we have been looking forward to for 16 months. 16 months, I think it is, yeah. The last time we did one of these was 16 months ago. It was December of 2018 after Series 11 aired. And that is, of course, we are ranking the series of New Who from least favourite to favourite. Last time we did 1 to 11, and this time we're doing 1 to 12, because obviously Series 12 has come out. So the main attraction, I suppose, of this video is to see where me and Adam rank Series 12 amongst it all, what we think, where we compare them. But not only that, to see potentially where things may have shifted since we last did the list, because obviously...
Yes. That's different, yeah.
In the last 16 months, we will have rewatched some stuff, and our minds might have changed. We might think something's better than we remembered. We might think something's worse than we remembered.
Opinions are fluid. They can change.
Yes. Yes, it sounded like a political statement. Anyway, but you're right. Opinions are very fluid, and they can change on a dime. I guarantee that. But yes, of course... we're going to rank the series 1 to 12, and yeah, of course, you guys leave your rankings in the comments, because, you know, you guys have your own voice as well, and, you know,
yes, please.
You will have your own favourites and your own reasonings, because, you know, a lot of this is very much on personal taste, and some of it's on critical analysis, and all sorts. There's a billion, bazillion things you could take into consideration. You know, I remember when we did this last time round, I remember I said, I put a very high importance on how I feel about the individual episodes, and then you said you put a very high importance on the overall picture and the end goal.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we both consider those two things on the opposite sides as well, but, you know, everyone has their different criterias. You know, some people are more interested in the overarching story, some people are more interested in the standalone episode quality, some people have a mix of both. It's interesting. It's a very interesting thing to do, because there's so many factors that you have to take in if you want to do like a full-on ranking, or you could just literally just spout it out of nowhere with no consideration, just be like that, and, you know, whatever.
Sometimes there are things that just come from the heart. We can't quite put your finger on it. It's just the way you feel about it, and that's completely valid as well.
Yeah, because I know people that they'll put a series at the top or the bottom because their favorite or least favorite episodes in that, and that's literally the only reason. Or, you know, I know someone that will be like, well, I don't really care for the episodes, but my favorite Doctor's in this season, so it's gonna rank high. Like, that's how some people operate, and it's, yeah, so everyone has their own different reasons for doing what they're doing. But yeah, I would say that based on last time, my criteria is fairly similar to what I had last time, except for the fact that there's a few little minor things that have changed for me in terms of my criteria that I don't really need to go into, because it doesn't really matter to the audience, but there are slight different changes I've made in terms of how I work this out. And also, there are, I would say, major changes to what my opinions are on certain things since we last did it. So it's going to be interesting to see how my list now compares to my list then, because I think it's quite different from memory. How about you?
It's reasonably the same, I think. There have maybe been a couple of shifts that have gone either down just a notch or down up a notch, but I think on the whole it's pretty consistent with last time, with changes more so within the seasons as opposed to where they rank, if that makes sense. My views on certain things. Yes. But on the whole, I think it's pretty similar for me from last time. Okay,
well, it'll still be interesting to see, especially for any of those who haven't seen our one that we did after Series 11. They'll you know, have a fresh eye on this, but yeah, this is going to be a very interesting video. Now, the last time we did this, I went first, so I think it's only fair that this time you go first. And before we start talking about it, I just reiterate the rules for those who don't know. The way we do lists on this channel is we have one person read their bottom, then the next person reads their bottom, then we cycle back, and we go up like a zip, all the way to the top. And then if we have 2 at the same level, we snap and talk about it together. So, anything else you want to get off your chest before we begin this very potentially controversial video?
No, let's just go straight into it.
Okay, what is your number 12?
My number 12 is Series 11. Now, my reason for this is I don't think... Now, this is going to sound contradictory right off the bat, but I don't think it's the worst season, but it is the least rewatchable for me, and that's a big factor in how I'm ranking these, in terms of just personally, which am I most drawn to? This is one that inspires me the least, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course it makes sense. You put this at the bottom last time.
Yeah.
And when it was a fresh wound, you spoke with a bit more discouragement than now.
Yeah, it's just one that there are plenty of seasons of this show which I think about and like, oh yeah, I remember this great bit or this great bit, and I get sort of excited by it, or sort of like, oh, why would they do this? Why would they do that? With this season, I don't really get either of that. I think, structurally, functionally, it's a perfectly harmless season. It's quite safe, which was one of my big complaints. I completely understand why they would do it. Complete change of direction, complete change of everything. So I think
an episode that sums up a lot of what you're saying is the finale.
Yeah, but I think even before that, and just in terms of how the show was structured, it's very safe. And I completely understand why the production team and everything chose to do it that way, because it's a new era, and you want to just sort of reintroduce it gracefully. You want to build up to certain things. However, in doing so, that season never really gave me anything to really sink my teeth into, except for a couple of really strong episodes that I still think are pretty good. But it's just, on the whole, everything about it just doesn't really jump out at me. And I don't have any sort of outward, grr towards it, no fervor.
Except for one episode, right?
Yeah, except for one episode, but that's just because of personal beef. Go back and watch the video. I'll explain it there.
Our best review of all time.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, that gave me a lot to talk about, but that wasn't so much the episode as the reaction to it.
Yeah. What came of it.
Yes. So that, yes, there is that, but beyond that, I mean, I just sort of nothing this season. I completely get why a lot of people really bought into it, and I get why a lot of people were really put off by it. But I'm just sort of right in the middle on that, as diplomatic as I can be. I just sort of nothing it. I don't feel strongly.
Yeah, well, I think you said before that rewatchability is a big factor for you, and for you this is the least rewatchable because it has no significance and it's bland.
Yeah, obviously culturally it has quite a significance.
Oh yeah, no, I mean to the actual show though, to the actual show.
Yeah, but to the actual show, yeah, it doesn't have anything. There's no particular landmark or tentpole, even after Series 12, which really makes me go, that feels much more significant now.
And even when you compare it to the classic series, like you look at season 24, for example, right? That's one that you could say doesn't really mean a lot and is quite poor quality. But at the very least, like, it introduces Ace, whereas I feel like Graham, Yaz, and Ryan haven't got to the point where people are, I don't think personally won't remember them the same way that people remember Ace, for example.
Yeah, there's always naturally there's always going to be people who are fans of whatever the show produces, and that's fantastic. They're the lifeblood of the show. That positivity is needed.
Yeah.
But I also think it's completely fair to criticize it, as it is to criticize any art, I think to have an opinion on something is good. Be it positive, negative, just so long as it's thought about. And for me, Graham, Ryan, and Yaz, just especially in Series 11, don't really do anything for me.
Mm-hmm. And how about the Doctor?
And same deal. She's written very safe. There's no real...
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you the Series 11 Doctor what her defining features were, because it's kind of flexible from episode to episode.
Outside of being the first female Doctor, which is a meta-textual thing.
Yeah, that doesn't actually define, because they didn't even, other than I'm forgetting the episode name, but the King James witch one.
Oh, the Witchfinders.
The Witchfinders, thank you.
Yeah.
Other than the Witchfinders, they didn't really delve into her gender identity at all. Which
Yeah,
could have been something that
yeah.
I was kind of expecting them to do, and could have been something really interesting, but they didn't. Beyond that one episode and that one little bit of conflict, which I thought was quite interesting, as I said in our review. But beyond that, yeah, there was nothing really spectacular.
Yeah, it was interesting.
Good or bad.
That's an interesting point to make, because they went into a whole bunch of things like racism, like they did an episode about like delivery service, like Amazon type things. They also did one about like disabilities too. But then you got the first female doctor, and the closest you get to, diving into her gender is obviously about witches. But it wasn't really that much of it. That wasn't really the point. It was just sort of a coincidence, I feel.
Yeah, and obviously you don't want it to be the whole conflict of an episode, but
you don't want it to be like Batwoman, for example.
Well, I haven't seen the show, so I couldn't say. But
Fair enough.
That
show focuses a lot on the gender, and probably I think it focuses too much on it. That's the opposite end of the problem, where they focus on it too much, and it distracts from the potential for an actual story, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and the big thing for me that I found kind of disappointing is, as I said, like, not just her being a woman, but her being a transgender woman is something that they could have done a lot of really interesting stuff with, but they never did.
Yeah, I don't know. It's possible that they may have been a bit scared to, because it's a very sensitive topic for some people.
That is true. But as you were saying, a lot of the topics that they talk about were generally more of the sort of progressive view, and it seemed like something that they could have leaned into, or could have at least tackled, be it good or bad, could have added a certain maturity to it, but there was no sort of real delivery for me in terms of that level of...
Well, we got... I mean, it certainly wasn't maturity when they did fake Donald Trump, was it? In Arachnids in the UK.
That was not subtle at all.
No.
But it's... Yeah, I don't know. It's just Series 11 just really... It feels like a functional series that does absolutely nothing for me.
That's absolutely really fair enough. And I think, based on what my subscribers have said, for the most part, I feel like a lot of them probably agree with you on that statement. Now, for me, the bottom 4 or 5 are very difficult to rank, because they're all so close in quality for me. Like, it's not like, this is not an easy ranking for me, because I feel like a lot of seasons have a very similar, for me personally, quite a similar balance of quality. And part of that comes down to personal taste of what episodes I prefer over others, but it also comes down to how a series is structured, and it also comes down to like the casting, the doctor, the companion, the showrunner, the style of writing, but just also the fact of the ones that I have at the bottom, they all have around about the same amount of episodes I like and dislike in them, and what separates them is a very marginal difference. But I do have my reasoning for it, having said that. So, with that said, my number 12 is Series 7. Which has changed from last time. It wasn't at the bottom last time. It is now, though, and there's a few reasons for this. So, let's dive into it. So, firstly, the structure. I think this, out of all the seasons we've ever had, probably has the worst structure of any series. The reason why, split in half over 2 years, and it's not only is it split in half, but the first half is only 5 episodes, and the second is like 8.
It was really bizarre.
And in that, there are no two-parters, and they are all standalone 45-minute episodes that are inspired by blockbuster genres. And none of them really reach their full potential, I feel. Even the ones I like A Town Called Mercy, and, you know, there's a couple in there that I'm kind of fond of. Like, I've slightly warmed to Crimson Horror a little bit, but none of them really reach that full potential. And the thing is, right, if an episode like A Town Called Mercy or The Crimson Horror, you know, was in another series that had a whole different variance of episodes and stories, if an episode like A Town Called Mercy or The Crimson Horror was in another series with a bunch of variants, it wouldn't seem so bad because they wouldn't be in a line of episodes that all feel the same. And that's, I think, the problem with Series 7 is that despite the fact that there's some that I like more than others, every single episode, bar like maybe the major ones, they all feel exactly the same. They are based on a Hollywood movie genre. They have a poster. They're really, really quirky and American and over the top. There's hardly any subtext for the characters at all. And the villains are forgettable, the endings are rushed, and they hardly ever tie into a proper overall story, I feel. And just speaking on a personal level, I don't like a lot of the episodes either. Like, there's quite a few in there that I really, really dislike watching. Like Asylum of the Daleks, for example. That's a big example. And also, on top of that, you've got, in the first half, is the departure of Amy and Rory. And we've mentioned this before in another video about how we feel that the departure of the Ponds was... it wasn't executed well, in our opinion. Because it feels like their characters shrunk, and the way they departed in Angels Take Manhattan, it, for me personally, just doesn't work. I understand the emotional element for those who are attached to the characters, but for me the story just doesn't give the ending they deserve. I mean, I like the performances, but the plot itself doesn't feel earned. It feels forced. And then you add on top of that, in the second half, you've got Clara as the impossible girl. And because the entire series revolves around her being a mystery box, she really doesn't have much character at all. Like, she's got a surface level personality, but her character isn't very well developed because she was being kept from the audience because she was, a mystery to be revealed in the finale. And for me, that again makes it very difficult to get invested in Series 7 because there's this just question mark of a character that's constantly in the show. And I also feel like, whilst I feel like Matt Smith's acting at some points here gets really strong because of his, now that he's at the point where he's got a lot of experience in the role, there's some points in this series where his acting is really, really strong, like in the finale, when he, the scene where he finds out about Trenzalore. That's great. And, the not in the name of the Doctor. Like, I do really like some of his acting. I think his performances in Series 7, there's quite a few where his acting shines. But the actual characterization of the 11th Doctor, I feel, is very surface level in Series 7. It's... a lot of the time, it's very much focused on the comedic elements, which I don't particularly enjoy. And when it attempts to do something interesting with his character, it often feels inconsistent episode to episode. Because, for example, like one of the reasons why I like A Town Called Mercy is how it explores the fact that he's starting to lose his lose control of himself, and wanting to shoot someone out of anger, and obviously Amy calms him down from it. But the problem is, the previous episode, there was none of that nuanced writing in there. In Dinosaurs in a Spaceship, it was like, he was like a 2-year-old on crack, and then at the very end, he killed Solomon in cold blood, and there was no development. It just happened. And I feel like this is a problem, is that there's just no synergy between the episodes. They all just feel like standalone 45-minute adventures that don't really link. So all of these small little problems just add up to one big meh for me. which is why I think is the reason why I've put Series 7 at the bottom.
That's fair enough.
Because even though it doesn't it doesn't invoke as much anger out of me as some others do, but I just feel like it's sort of it doesn't really have enough strengths to be any higher.
And do you count the 50th as part of Series 7 or its own little separate entity?
That's a tough question. I don't know.
Because that affected, not to give anything away, but that affected my ranking of Series 7.
Yeah, it's a good question, actually.
Because in my head, the name of the Doctor isn't the series finale of Series 7.
Yeah.
The Day of the Doctor is.
Yeah. The thing is, though, if we are going to count the specials, then we also have to count the Doctor Wetter in the Wardrobe, the Snowman, and the Time of the Doctor.
That's true.
Which Doctor Wetter in the Wardrobe I've always hated. The Snowman I'm very mixed on, and the Time of the Doctor I used to love and now I hate. So I've U-turned on that big time because I rewatched it recently and I really didn't like it. So yeah, the 50th I like, but I feel like you can't. I feel like this is going back to what I was saying in the intro about, are you going to praise a series just purely based on one episode? And I don't know if I can do that with Series 7. I feel like even though I understand that Moffat was focused on the 50th, I feel like there isn't really an excuse to produce something of this quality anyway. Like, it just doesn't... I don't buy that reasoning for it. So I do, in some regards, consider the 50th, but I don't feel like it is as important in this ranking as the episodes that are actually in the series, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It completely does.
Yeah, but I get what you're saying about the 50th, because that is one big, like, silver lining to this. So, yeah. I did take that into consideration, but I think just in nailing down why I thought this is at the bottom, I think I sort of had to slightly discount the 50th from the equation.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's why I've put Series 7 at number 12. So what is your number 11?
My number 11 is Series 6.
Snap.
Aha!
There we are.
The reason I put this here is because it's a series that doesn't have a Day of the Doctor for me. It does have the God Complex,
yes,
which is a brilliant episode.
Yep.
But beyond that, it's where I sort of excuse me, as the show was airing, I still watched every episode as it came out, but it's when I started to do it more out of devotion to the show, as opposed to actual excitement week on week to see it. If that makes sense?
Yeah.
It's when the cracks first started to show for me personally, in the structure of the show, in the direction it was going. As I said, with a couple of bright spots, some of the cinematography throughout the whole series is stunning. Some of the best in the whole series run. And there's some brilliant ideas in there, like the silence, I think, are a fantastic idea.
Oh, yeah.
A little bit sidelined.
I will say, I'm not meaning to cut you off or anything, but we obviously did snap. One of the reasons why I have put Series 6 slightly above 7, the silence is taken into consideration there, I will say.
Yeah, the silence are a fantastic idea, and it just started to feel less tight of a show for me here, and it's one of the series... Of the Matt Smith series, it's the one I'm the least interested in rewatching. Series 5, I think, is a really solid series. And it was just a great new jumping off point for this for the show. And then Series 7 is all over the place, but the highs are much higher for me.
Okay, that's interesting.
Which is why I've put excuse me, which is why I've put Series 6 lower. Because it's just not one that... Of the Matt Smith series, it's the one that I'm least interested in.
Okay. This is an interesting one for me to talk about, because I remember I had this last place last time, and I had it last place for a very long time. But the reason why I've put it a decimal place above 7 is because, firstly, we mentioned the silence, brilliant concept. I feel like there's nothing in Series 7 that comes close to it in terms of a concept for a villain.
That's fair enough.
But, however, having said that, I'm not particularly big fan of how it's executed in The Impossible Astronaut, and then as the series goes on, they just become worse. Like, in the finale, they're just window dressing.
Yeah.
But, and I don't like the Silence storyline either. I think I honestly think it's a proper disaster. Like, it's just, it's such a weird snowball of just Moffatisms. And I don't know. It's never clicked with me. I just think it's really messy and all over the place, and it feels like it's throwing all the paint at the wall and just seeing what sticks. It's not very cohesive, and I think one very, very, very strong weakness to this series for me is River Song as well. Because this Series 6 put a very big magnifying glass on River Song's character, and I feel this is the point where she really, for me, failed as a character, because she just became so important to the story, and it didn't feel natural. It felt very forced in. Like, let me put this for example. So, in the opening two-parter, something about her changes from when the last time we saw her in Series 5. She feels so sexualized. Like, the entire, all the exposition in Part 2 and Day of the Moon is all about, like, her teasing that, her and the Doctor's sex life, and it's just so weird, and I don't vibe with that at all. I just, especially with Matt Smith's Doctor, I just find that so bizarre. Then you get A Good Man Goes to War, where the entire episode tries to convey emotion through poetry, again, which is something I just don't vibe with. I don't really feel that connected to a story if it's told through narration and poetry and, like, fucking lines about, like, oh, the forest through the trees because the only water in the forest is the river. Like, it's just not something I don't really vibe with that way of telling a story. It's just not my thing. And then, so we talked about those two big stories with the first half, which I think I can understand why someone would enjoy, but it's just not my cup of tea. But then we get to Part 2 with Let's Kill Hitler and The Wedding of River Song, which I genuinely think is poorly written TV. Like, it's not just me not liking it for its style. I actually think it's quite bad. Personally I think it's quite bad, just based on my critical analysis of it. I think they're just... It's not cohesive, it's very messy, it's very all over the place, and I think the reason why people find this entertaining is because it's got a lot of very silly humor that a certain crowd enjoys, that I don't.
That's fair enough.
The finale has a massive cop-out in it as well. Like, it just leads to nothing. The Doctor and River get married, but I feel nothing towards it, and look into my eye, I'm a robot.
And to what you were saying, that's why 6 is lower for me, is because River Song in Series 6 is a different character than she is in 4, 5, and then in the special with Capaldi.
Yes, very different.
She's completely different, and I did not like her character in Series 6.
Yes.
She just doesn't work for me. And I get why a lot of people did like her, but just for me, it did not work in that series.
Yes, and the reason why I had 6 at the bottom for so long is because of how much it irritates me. And I will say, Series 6 does irritate me more than Series 7. It does. The episodes that I don't like in Series 6 irritate me a lot more. Like, I talked about those Moffat, major episodes, but then on top of that, you've got, Curse of the Black Spot, the Flesh two-parter, Night Terrors, Closing Time, just, again, piling on top of episodes that I just don't enjoy. But I have put Series 6 slightly above 7 because of the concept of the silence, the ambition to do something big and failing to do so, rather than ambition to do something not very interesting, because I feel like that's the problem with Series 7, is it tries to do something not very interesting. And also I do like A Town Called Mercy in Series 7, but that's the only episode from the main run that I really like. Whereas in Series 6, I really like The Doctor's Wife, The Girl Who Waited, and The God Complex. And I think ever since I've gotten more into Classic Who, I've started to come to appreciate the strengths of, the really good individual stories. And I think with Series 6, because there's 3 of them, I think that's enough for me to quantify it being a little bit above 7.
Fair enough.
But still not a big fan. So, yeah, that's my ramble. What's your number 10?
My number 10 is Series 12.
Ooh, okay.
Now, again, primarily for rewatchability, because there was a large majority of this season I really enjoyed. I thought that was really strong. However, there's just a large holdover from Series 11 of certain character-isms that just don't work for me. And it brings the whole picture down. Despite the singular episodes, like The Haunting of Villa Diodati, Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror...
Can You Hear Me a lot, right? And Fugitive of the Jadoon?
And I really like Can You Hear Me, and I really like Fugitive of the Jadoon. But it still just, as a whole, has that thing that's just not... It just doesn't grab me, and and I do think overall it's a much, much, much better series than Series 11. It's much more engaging, it's much more ambitious, it's much more interesting. The performances across the board, I think everyone's just much more comfortable in their character's skin, which is why I've ranked it higher than Series 11. On the whole, it feels just much more motivated, much more interesting, much more creative. It's really... it's got a lot more intrigue in it for me beyond... And I don't mean that in just in terms of the Timeless Children subplot. I mean, each week I felt like there was promise that it would be more like something I would enjoy. And especially in that towards that middle section, right before we got to the finale too, there was a run of episodes which I just really, really enjoyed.
It was from Nikola Tesla all the way up to Haunting, right?
Praxeus sort of dipped for me a little bit, but there was still so many strong elements of Praxeus that I really enjoyed. However, the ending of this series, it's just, as we were talking about in our series recap, it just feels hollow to me. It doesn't feel complete yet, and not just because it leaves on a semi-cliffhanger, but just the execution of it doesn't feel satisfactory. And again, I'm not a fan of this TARDIS team.
Yeah.
I just wanted it to be Yaz this season, because Graham and Ryan had nothing to do. Mm-hmm. And that's why Series 12 is so low on my list. Do you think it's a huge it's a sign of good things to come? I think it's definitely an improvement. It's definitely ambitious. It's much more entertaining, genuinely funny at times for me, but it's still not quite got that spark that really inspires me.
Do you think maybe because you know how in the recap we talked about how this one left a lot of question marks? Do you think if Chibnall manages to pull through like a really cool story overall, like this one might go up in retrospect?
I think so, because I think there's so much positivity to mine in this season for me. It's just let down by a deflating greater image that just didn't do anything. That's
a very interesting. This I think is so pointing towards your overall feeling on like how does the series feel as a package rather than its individual parts. I think that's a really interesting, unique opinion.
Yeah, there's something, I don't know, it's just maybe from when I'm writing, I like to think of, particularly because I've written things for, if I'm lucky enough, later down the line to do, which are a whole series of things, and I like to know where it's going and how the tone is going to... I like to know the roller coaster of the show and picture it. Is it a roller coaster that's going to be exciting and memorable, or is it one that's just going to basically be like a train going from station A to station D? If that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Is it my turn for my number 10?
Yes, go for it.
Okay, my number 10 is one that has gone down quite a bit since we last did this. Series 9.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There are 4 episodes that I really love in this series. Under the Lake, Before the Flood, Face the Raven, and Heaven Sent.
Yep.
I love those. But going off what you said about Series 12 and relating it to this, as an overall package, I resent what this series represents. I do not enjoy its end goal. I find what this series does with the Doctor, with the companion, and with the story arc, with the other companion we meet, Ashilda, none of that I like. If it wasn't for Under the Lake Before the Flood, Face the Raven, and Heaven Sent being some of my favourite New Who of all time, this would probably be at the dead last. Because I really, really do not like Series 9. I don't like how it prides itself on trying to subvert every single story it tells. You get that with the opening two-parter, where it has a section of the story where you get a brilliantly touching scene between the Doctor and Davros that feels like it's adapted straight from Big Finish. That is completely ruined by the fact that within the context of the story it's in, it doesn't actually mean anything because they were lying.
Yeah.
Because... and things like rewriting Davros's history so that, you know, he actually did have eyes, but the reason why he didn't open them is because he was scared rather than being burned out. And the reason why he's got the eye on his forehead is because he can't see, which is just dumb.
Yep.
Then rewriting the Daleks to be like, oh, instead of saying exterminate, they're actually trying to say I love you, which is dumb. You know, you get like Capaldi coming out on a guitar with the sonic shades. You've got Missy tickling a Dalek's balls. If we move further in the series, we've got just Doctor Who on drugs with like the girl who died and the woman who lived. I do not understand where the creative process came from, because the first part is written by Jamie Matheson, who did Oxygen, Mummy on the Orient Express, and Flatline, which are all brilliant. I don't know how he came up with this with Moffat. Then you've got Catherine Tregenna, who did The Woman Who Lived. She wrote some of my favourite episodes of Torchwood ever. Out of Time, Captain Jack Harkness, Adam, brilliant episodes. And what do we get from Doctor Who? The fucking Woman Who Lived, the most forgettable, boring piece of crap I've ever seen. With I don't know, and then oh god, it's just such a mess. Like Ashilda as a character and all that, and the Zygon two-parter as well. I've soured on that massively as well. You've got like the Davros scene in the first story. You got this inspirational war speech from Capaldi that has gone viral online, but within the context of the story, it doesn't mean anything because he had to say it like 20 times. It's just dumb. It's so dumb. I don't understand. And then, of course, Hellbent, which is the worst episode of all time that completely undermines the entire series. So, yeah, like I said, if it wasn't for those 4 episodes that I love to death and a couple of very strong performances and some very strong music from Murray Gold and some very strong direction throughout the series, this would probably be last, because the overall package, I think, is the most destructive that we've ever gotten. And that's my rant over.
Fair enough.
What's your number 9?
My number 9 is Series 7.
Here we go.
And this is the only one that really bends my thing about the whole picture, because I cannot, in good conscience, despite I think the God Complex is a better episode than Day of the Doctor, I cannot put that above it. Day of the Doctor had an impossible task, and it delivered, in my opinion. It could have been more fan servicey and lent into the classic series much more. Yes, I would have preferred that, but we did have the Big Finish play light at the end for just that. And as a companion piece, it's lovely. But Series 7 is a mess, as you were saying, but it gave us John Hurt as the War Doctor, so it's higher than Series 6.
Yeah, it does do that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's like if you watch the first 95% of Series 7, you're like, this is probably the weakest I've ever seen, and then you get the last scene of Name of the Doctor, and then you see the 50th, and you're like, oh.
That's where he was saving it.
It literally, it's one of those cases of doing everything at the last minute, It's like your homework.
But it paid off.
Yeah. Oh.
And that's basically all I've got to say on Series 7, really. It's, it doesn't really do anything for me except for the 50th. So.
Yeah.
And also, it also gave us that brilliant 50th teaser trailer where it had that awesome rendition of the theme and it transitioned through all those scenes from the classic series and then on.
Although I do have to say though, I think the title sequence for Series 7B is the weakest we've ever had, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I do not like it. I don't like the music. I don't like the titles.
Yeah. But we did get Night of the Doctor.
That is true.
We got Paul McGann, Big Finish Paul McGann, on screen, regenerating into John Hurt.
Yeah. I wish that was the cold open to the 50th. Imagine if we didn't know anything about it and the 50th opened with that and then we went into the titles. Amazing.
Yeah. Anyway, let's not muck around. I could talk about Series 7 and what I would change about it for days, but I don't want to do that. I don't want to waste time.
No.
My number 9 is Series 11.
Haha, wait. Yes. Yeah,
of course you didn't snap, because it's at the bottom.
Yes, that's right. I wasn't paying attention. For some reason, I heard something else. I didn't hear you say Series 11.
No.
Here we are.
That's my number 9. So, like I said at the beginning, all my bottom 4 are very close, so even though this may seem slightly too high, it is literally decimal places apart from the 3 I've ranked below it. This is a hard one to talk about because it doesn't really do much, but I find a lot of it inoffensive. And, whilst I think the Chibnall episodes are very weak, especially Arachnid, Saranga, and the finale, I do think those Chibnall episodes are very weak, but I find the guest writer episodes to have some quite redeeming qualities to them. Especially It Takes You Away. I don't think It Takes You Away is a great episode per se. It's not like The God Complex. It's not like, Heaven Sent. It's not like The Haunting of Villa Diodati. It's not like that. Or, I was trying to think of one from Series 7. It's I don't know, it's probably, I probably don't even like it as much as A Town Called Mercy or the 50th. But what I think Series 11 gets right is the grief over Grace's death, because, and the reason why I love Heaven Sent, but Hellbent ruins it, but even though I don't like the Series 11 finale, nothing in Series 11 undermines or takes away the real impact Grace's death has on the series. What Chris Chibnall managed to pull off with Grace's death, it touches a personal place and it feels more real than I think any of the drama in the 3 that I've ranked below it, bar Heaven Sent. Obviously Heaven Sent was ruined by Hellbent. And that's really the only reason I can justify it being higher, is that I think a lot of it's inoffensive, and I also feel like, whilst I don't like this series, I think it's very bland and not rewatchable. The drama element for me works more here than it does in something like The Angels Take Manhattan, or something like, The Wedding of River Song, or something like Hellbent. I feel like that's the one thing that's consistent for me, is I feel like the character drama, even though it's not very, it's not that brilliant, it's just the fact that I feel like it's a little bit more real, and that is a side that I lean to, and I want Chibnall to take the bull by the horns and write a brilliant character drama, because I know he's capable of it. Unfortunately, I don't think he's quite got there yet. Yep. To make a small comparison, it's a Series 7. So, The Rings of Akaten. In that episode, I quite like a lot of the stuff in the alien, planet and all that. That's all fine. But I feel like the weakest part of that episode is the drama surrounding Clara's parents. Because it's so fairy tale. It's so unrealistic that I just personally don't buy into it. Whereas with Grace's death in Series 11, I do buy into it. And I think that's why the moments when she is brought up, that's the strongest moments in Series 11. And It Takes You Away is a great example of that because she's literally a ghost in it.
Yeah, and that brings up the point of Chibnall's strengths versus Moffat's strengths as a writer, as a showrunner. Mm-hmm. It's very clear that Chibnall is much better at human drama than he is at science fiction.
Yes, but having said that, I still think Series 11 is quite a weak series, and it's still quite close to the others. But that was the reason why I put it slightly above, only a notch.
That's completely fair enough.
Yeah. So, your number 8
is Series 9.
Ah, here we go.
Okay. Oh boy. So the rewatchable episodes. Okay. Heaven Sent will always be in my top 10 Doctor Who episodes ever. Face the Raven, not that far behind. In contender for number 10. Before the Flood and Under the Lake are amazing. They're so much. They're just perfect, fun Doctor Who. Brilliant stuff. Mm-hmm. The rest of the season, as you said, was inconsistent, messy, tonally all over the place, and hell-bent. So I cannot in good conscience put it any higher than any of the other seasons, despite how much I love the good episodes. As a whole picture, it has hell-bent. So
and a lot of the other stories you didn't mention have similarities to Hellbent. Not as extreme, but they do have similarities to Hellbent and how they how they execute their stories. And it's quite a tiresome watch.
Yeah.
And in terms of story arcs, I think it's also the weakest. The Hybrid is the weakest story arc. It's just nothing. It's completely vacuous bollocks.
And the thing that really, really, really gets under my skin about Hellbent is just how much potential it had to be the best of them all, and it just didn't do anything with any of them. Any of the ideas. What's
your thinking behind putting it above Series 12? By the way, just curious.
Heaven Sent, basically.
That's a good point.
One of the greatest pieces of one of the greatest pieces of television I've ever seen. And I could watch. Again, bending the whole picture rule slightly. I bought the Series 9 Part 2 DVD by itself just for Heaven Sent and Face the Raven. And I didn't buy the Part 1 disc of Series 9. I still don't own the Part 1 of Series 9. Oh, no, actually I do, because my dad bought it for me. Because he's like, here, have a whole bunch of collections of Doctor Who discs that were at the op shop. I got the limited edition DVD. So the next person needs to one-up us with the Steelbook. Oh, God. I would love a Steelbook, again, just for Heaven Sent. As I said, Heaven Sent, as soon as I first watched it on broadcast, I immediately watched it on replay because I was just so blown away by it. Mm-hmm. Heaven Sent.
It's an extraordinary feat of television. I love it.
Absolutely.
Yep.
It transcends television. Yep. It's its own thing.
Yeah. If it wasn't for Hellbent ruining the Hybrid stuff and basically ruining Heaven Sent, it might be the best episode of all time.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It brought back Doctor Who for me. Like, there were other episodes that I really enjoyed, but this was one that reminded me, this is why I love this show. This is genius. And for that high of positive emotions that I got on that first initial watch and every subsequent time I watch Heaven Sent, despite the fact that it's been dampened, I cannot put it below the other seasons just because of how marvelous an episode Heaven Sent is by itself, let alone the fact that we have Face the Raven and the Flood two-parter.
Okay. All right then. That's all you got to say?
That's all I got to say. I do not want to talk about Series 9 anymore.
Fair enough. Is it time for my number 8?
I believe so.
Was Series 9 your number 8?
Series 9 was my number 9.
Oh,
sorry, no, my number 8. Yes. No, sorry, it was
that's
my
right.
number 8.
Wait, hang on. Did you go? Oh, that's right. We snapped. That's right. We snapped. That's why I'm going ahead. Okay, so it's time for my number 8 then.
Go for it.
Okay, now I put a lot of thought into this. I was really I've been formulating this list for ever since the finale aired. I've been formulating the list and rewatching a lot of New Who to sort of gauge where I'm going to put things.
Yeah.
And I have to say, and this is going to be my most controversial opinion in this video.
Yeah.
I have to say, upon rewatching something, this one went down quite a lot. Because my number 8 is Series 5.
I knew it! I knew it! I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah. Which, funnily enough, as controversial as that is, about a week ago it was even lower on the list. But I bumped it back up because I remembered how bad Series 9 was at points. But yeah, I have put Series 9 at number 8, and I know this is gonna rub some people the wrong way because Series 5 is an all-time favorite of the majority of New Who fans. I know it is. It's a fan favorite. It's a beloved series. It's a nostalgic point. It's a fairy tale. It's one that people always go back to and always love. And I get it because when I was a kid, I was just the same. I was the same as everyone else that feels this way about Series 5, about it being this magical, experience and all that. I get it. I was there. I was there when it happened. I remember what it was like. But as I've grown older, it's basically, to put it in perspective, as I've grown older, I've grown less fond of this era of the show, specifically the Matt Smith one. And as I grew away from it, it started with Series 6 and 7, firstly, when I did my first big rewatch, and that's why they ended up at the bottom of my last ranking as well. But with Series 5, it's taken all the way until this year for this to happen, because I feel like it's one of those series that I always would, recognize why it was a popular series, and I feel like I would often give it the benefit of the doubt because it was a popular series and because people had justified reasons for liking it. But it was one of those ones I always kind of under the surface felt a little bit like, I don't think I like this as much as everyone else. And I think as I've gotten older and more confident in expressing my reviews and just when I rewatch episodes, I'm a lot more willing to give my own take on it rather than, conform to an overall consensus. Yeah. I rewatched a lot of Series 5 in the last few months, and I just didn't really care about it, to be honest. There's 2 episodes I love in it. Amy's Choice, brilliant episode, loved that one. And Vincent and the Doctor is an absolute classic. It's a tearjerker. It's a banger. I love it so much to death. I'll never dislike Vincent and the Doctor. But everything else is, for me, ranges from average to bad. I find the 11th Hour to be okay. I find the Angel two-parter to be very flawed and very style over substance. And I'm just not a fan of the finale. I don't really buy into the cracks in time arc. I don't buy into the fairy tale style. I don't really buy into the companions either. I mean, I think in Amy's Choice it's very strong, but for the first half of the series, Amy Pond's main character goal is to have sex with the Doctor. I don't think many people bring this up outside of the last scene of Flesh and Stone, but when I rewatched it, I realized, no, it's there. It's all over it. And especially when, not just because everyone always points to the last scene of Flesh and Stone, because that's the most obvious example, but it wasn't just that, because I always thought in my mind that was just one moment that Moffat screwed up. But then I watched The Vampires of Venice, which comes right after that, and that's the episode when Rory comes on the TARDIS, and the entire episode's character plot revolves around that, and I just don't vibe with that at all. I just don't feel like that is what I consider to be strong character writing. I feel like that's really just not what I look for in this show. I don't like The Beast Below. I don't like Victory of the Daleks. I don't like the Silurian two-parter. I don't like The Lodger. And the other thing that really dawned on me, that I was surprised when I went to rewatch, people always will remember the highlights, and that's fair enough, because there are definitely some very bright highlights, but I think in quite a few of the episodes, Matt Smith's acting performance is actually a little bit weaker than it is later on. There's a few episodes where I watch him act in the role and he feels very unsure of himself. There's a scene in The Beast Below where Amy asks him about the Time War, and the way he performs the scene is nowhere near on the level of someone like Christopher Eccleston or David Tennant. He's very unsure about what he's saying. And there's episodes where I feel like he doesn't have much of a presence. Like Vampires of Venice is another one. His Doctor feels very mild. And I feel like maybe that's why I'm not as annoyed by him here as I am later, because he doesn't have all the over-the-top humour. He has some cringy moments, but he doesn't have as much over-the-top humour like he does later. But with this series, the problem I have is more so the fact that he feels a bit undercooked in about half the series. He's quite undercooked. And I just found rewatching this series, I didn't like it as much as I used to, and it's just not for me. It's not my cup of tea. I don't like the storyline. It's just not what I enjoy at all. So that's why it's ended up this low.
Fair enough.
And I know there's going to be pitchforks, but I think I'm justified.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yep.
Makes sense.
What's your number 8?
My number 7.
Oh, well, no. Didn't you say your number 9 was Series 9?
No, because I've got 11, 6, 12, 7, 9.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah. So your number 7.
I'm at number 8. Yeah, my number 7 is Series 8.
Snap.
Okay. I put it over Series 9, even though there is no single episode in Series 8 that comes close to Heaven Sent.
Mm-hmm.
There is Mummy on the Orient Express, there is Flatline, there are elements of Deep Breath, there are elements of all different bits and pieces, but what I really like about Series 8 is that there is a mission statement. There is a focus to it that the other two Capaldi seasons, particularly Series 9, don't quite have. Series 8 is clearly got this sort of what is death and what does death mean to people, and in some respects what is murder, and can the Doctor be redeemed if he goes back to how he was in the Time War, etc., etc. And these sorts of questions that Dares asks are quite interesting. It doesn't always work very well in each of the episodes. Time Heist.
Oh, are you there?
Yep, can you hear me?
Oh, sorry, you just paused for a second. Can you repeat your last sentence?
I was just saying that there are some episodes where this question that's being raised doesn't really work. I mean, any of the filler episodes, really, Time Heist, etc., etc. But
Kill
as a
the
whole,
Moon.
Even though Kill the Moon, even though Death in Heaven and
Dark Water.
the other one, Dark Water, they aren't particularly bombastic or hugely exciting episodes. In fact, they're quite dull. There is a clear intention. There's a purpose to them. There's a drive that feels so much more cohesive from Deep Breath to Death in Heaven, which makes me say that this series is better than Series 9, and on a whole, I would enjoy doing a binge watch of that series than I would enjoy doing a binge watch of Series 9 because of the way Series 9 resolves.
Yeah, I'm very much the same, and I think I'm going to add on top of what you said by saying, okay, so in terms of the episodes, I don't think the overall average episode quality is any that much higher than Series 5 for me. They're relatively around the same. I would say the better episodes of Series 5 are better, and the worse episodes of Series 8 are worse, but then the middle stuff for me in Series 8 is slightly better than the middle stuff in Series 5, which puts it around about the same level in terms of the episode quality for me. And the overall story arc of Missy is, I would say, I probably maybe slightly prefer it to The Cracks because it's a little bit more focused on a character, but I wouldn't say it's that well executed overall. And like
Missy, particularly in Series 8, is just an Evil River song. She's
yeah,
not...
and also, like The Big Bang, I don't like Death in Heaven that much, and for me, as finales, they're on a very similar level. I'd probably say The Big Bang's maybe slightly better because it's I don't know why, it just is. But there are, for me, in terms of how much I enjoy them, very different kinds of episodes for sure, with very different kinds of issues I have with them. But for me, in terms of the overall enjoyable factor, I find them about the same. But for me, the main reason why I like Series 8 more than Series 5 is because of the 12th Doctor. Because
there it is.
I've said it when I was talking about Series 5, I don't hate Matt Smith. I think that's a bit of an extreme view to take based on what I've said. I don't. But I'm not the biggest fan of his Doctor. He's just not what I enjoy in the character. But even though I think that some of the writing is very illogical and they make him kind of a sociopath without reason, and it's very, very much dug into what is the theme of the series rather than what makes sense, I will admit that the 12th Doctor in Series 8 is so fucking entertaining that I don't care. His performance is electric. I was rewatching this scene where Clara's throwing away the TARDIS keys from Dark Water, and the intensity that Capaldi shows in that scene just sums it up. The 12th Doctor in Series 8 is like nothing we've ever seen before. He's stripped back. He's like almost like a sociopath at some points. It's so different.
Oh god, yeah.
And the performance from Capaldi just completely complements the scripts he's given. And all of the episodes in Series 8 that you would consider average, like, episodes like Into the Dalek or, The Caretaker or, like stuff like that, Robot of Sherwood. For me, what makes those more enjoyable than episodes from Series 5 that I consider average is Capaldi's Doctor. I just find him such an electric presence on screen. And, well, I don't like Clara and Danny Pink, but for me, it's all saved by Capaldi's Doctor. He is so good in Series 8. He is the best part of it by a million miles. And
he was just so refreshing.
Yeah. And just
it was so refreshing.
His performance, it's just, it's beautiful. I love his performance. It's so, the acting alone brings it up a few notches. And I'm not saying that I think Matt Smith's a bad actor or anything. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying
he's fantastic.
I think for what I like in the Doctor, in the Doctor's character and what you can do with the character, I am more interested in what they did with the Doctor in Series 8 than what they did in the Doctor in Series 5, and that's why I put 8 above 5. But having said that it's not higher than this point, because for me the weak episodes of Series 8 are very poor. Like Kill the Moon in the Forest of the Night, Time Heist, Death in Heaven, very bad. But the Doctor himself, brilliant. And that's why I've put it here. So
Fair enough.
we snapped.
Yes.
Does that mean I go next or you go next?
It was my choice, so I think it's your turn.
Okay. My number 6 is Series 12. Now, out of all the series on this list, this is the one I'm the least sure about. I said this in the recap that this would be the hardest one for me to rank, and I mean that because I really don't know where a lot of the gaps are going to be filled and how they're going to be filled, because that's one of the reasons why you ranked it low, was because of the uncertainty it leaves. And I'm sort of similar in that I'm giving it the benefit of the doubt. Because the stuff that I like in Series 12, I really like. The stuff I dislike. And the stuff I'm uncertain on, I don't know what's to come. So I'm sort of prepared to allow Chibnall to have the benefit of the doubt. And then if those unanswered questions don't result well, then it could go down in retrospect. But what I will say about Series 12 is that I think it's a vast improvement on Series 11. I think the individual episode quality has taken a step up. It's a lot more exciting to watch. It's also the best looking series we've ever had. I thought Sega Nakanola's music was absolutely outstanding. I've listened to the soundtrack on loop the past week, and I think it's very strong. Also, Sacha Darwin as the Master, really like him. That's one of the reasons why I've put... I don't know how controversial this is, but one of the reasons why I've put it above Series 8 is because I like Sacha Darwin in Series 12 more than Michelle Gomez in Series 8. And whilst Jodie Whittaker's still not, like, perfect or not, like, a great character or anything, I think she's a lot better in Series 12 than she is in Series 11. She shows a lot more
They also just
side.
give her much more... They just give her more to do.
Yeah. And her performance was allowed to express more of her variety of acting and her range, rather than just the quirky adventurer she is in Series 11. But like you, I would still say the weakest element is the companions. There was just too many of them. And unfortunately, the finale was a bit of a flat ending. But I will say, whilst I don't like a lot of Chibnall's style, I have to say the overall storyline kept me hooked throughout the entire thing. I remember as soon as... Because Spyfall, like, I had my thoughts on Spyfall, right? But as soon as we got that scene at the end of Spyfall Part 2, where she goes to Gallifrey, from a moment that happened all the way up to the end of the finale, I was like... Every week I was like, I want to see the next episode. I want to see the next episode. Especially when you get something like Fugitive of the Jadoon as well. I feel like there was a lot of... there was a lot of meat thrown at the table. Not all of it worked, but I found Series 12 a lot more enjoyable to watch than a lot of the ones below it. Now, it might not age well, and I'm willing to, accept that. I'm willing to accept that over time it may go down in the list if the unanswered questions don't come to fruition. But what I will say is the parts of the series that I do think are strong, I think will remain strong. One of them being The Haunting of Villa Diodati. I think that episode is always going to remain strong for me. And things like the performance from Nikola Tesla, and obviously, like I said, the direction, the sound, and just a few elements. I just think there's some parts to this series that really surprised me at how much I liked them. So it may just be because it's fresh in my mind. But at the moment, I'm putting Series 12 at this spot. I don't see it rising above this spot. But if Chibnall pulls off a long-term story, it may stay. And that's what I've got to say about it.
Yeah. We'll just see how this rumoured, obviously we can't say for sure, but this rumoured 5-year plan pans out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right.
Your number 6.
We're at my number 6 is Series 5.
Ooh.
Now, The reason I put it here is I definitely prefer Capaldi in Series 8 than I do Smith in Series 5. However, in the season's mission statement of what they were trying to do, with Series 5's mission statement being, be a fun fairy tale version of Doctor Who that is appealing to people who've never seen the show before. You could start at Series 5 and just get it, and which is what it did for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
It does that in spades, so much more successfully than everything that Series 8 tries to do in making the Doctor a dark character, because it only sort of takes half measures, and the bang average episodes to bad episodes that I find in Series 8 feel like they belong in Series 6, and I the bad episodes, or the more average episodes of Series 5 feel like they fit better in Series 5 than the bad episodes
I
of
would
Series
disagree
8
on one
do,
of those.
which-
The Silurian two-parter.
That's fair enough. The
I
Silurian
feel like
two-parter,
the Silurian two-parter and Series 5 are like chalk and cheese in terms of tone.
That is fair enough. I just feel that the Silurian two-parter, it has enough whimsy, if you will, to feel like it belongs. However, I think those two episodes are just, last time I watched them, they're just kind of average base Under Siege stories with a vague veil of political thriller thrown over the top.
I think they're quite weak, personally. I rewatched them recently.
Yeah,
I thought they were quite... I thought they weren't terrible, but I thought they were quite, like, below average, honestly.
I'm not going to sit here and try and defend them, because they're not the episodes
I
really
also
enjoy
think
about Series
Matt
5.
Smith's
But
Doctor is poorly characterized. He feels like Tennant. It's very weird.
Yes, it does feel like an episode written for Tennant.
Mm-hmm.
However, that feels more in place than Time Heist and Forest of the Night do in Series 8. And also the Big Bang, though it is quite a waffly finale, which I know is a bit of a conscientious opinion that we both share. The Big Bang, I still like it more than you do. I still enjoy the Big Bang, and the Pandorica opens, I think it's a clusterfuck, but it's a fun clusterfuck.
Yeah, I'm not really a big fan of it,
whereas-
honestly. It's a bunch of people standing around a box for 45 minutes and then a really neat cliffhanger at the end.
Whereas Series 8, the finale is just a bit of a downer without any interesting character stuff done.
I think maybe also you have to take into consideration that I probably like Series 8 more because it's dark.
I do too, though. That I mean, to put into perspective, my favorite Doctor Who thing that Russell T Davies ever wrote was Children of Earth.
Yeah.
I much prefer dark. I like when shows go dark, and that's part of my problem with Death in Heaven is the Doctor's realization doesn't really come from a place of darkness. It just
true. I don't like Death in Heaven either,
happens.
to be honest. I don't know what to say to that.
Whereas the Big Bang feels much more in line with the whimsy of Series 5.
Yeah, sorry, you just cut out again. I think I know what you said, though. Did you say that the Big Bang fits in the tone? Is that what you meant?
Yes, the Big Bang feels much more in line with the whimsy of Series 5.
It absolutely does, and you're right about that. It does fit with the tone. I will give you that.
And that is why, on the whole, I would put Series 5. But they are, like you, Series 5 and Series 8 are pretty interchangeable, but for very different reasons.
Yeah, I understand why. Makes sense.
Because they don't go dark enough with the Doctor in Series 8. I wanted them to go darker.
Yeah.
And instead we get a speech that sounds like a Smith speech from Series 6. Anyway, what is your number 5?
Series 10.
Snap.
Ooh! Oh my word,
Actually,
Adam, what's going on here? Alright.
Actually, no. I misread my list. That's not a snap.
Okay, I thought so. I was like, oh my word. Anyway. Backtrack. My number 5 is Series 10. This is the
Wow, what a surprise.
Yeah, this is the only Moffat series. In fact, this is the only series since the end of the Davies era that I can watch from start to finish and say that I genuinely love. Because, you know, whilst I think the other series of New Who have some positives and moments in them and they work on a certain level, this is the only one for me that works pretty much from start to finish. I rewatched Series 10 pretty recently, and I think it's got the most consistent run of episodes in a very long time. From the pilot all the way to about halfway through Lie of the Land, it's pretty good. And it only gets bad right at the end of that 3-part Monk trilogy thing, which is a disappointing ending. It's really annoying. But leading up to that, you've got the introduction of Bill Potts, which is a companion that I really, really enjoy. She's not one of my favourites of all time, but I do like her. I think she's a breath of fresh air, and her dynamic with the 12th Doctor is so weird. It's so bizarre, like the fact that you've got this really, you know, wacky old university professor alien with this, like, modern 21st century, like, progressive young girl at university that, like, takes selfies. And then you've got Nardole, who's, like, another bizarre element. And I just find that whole oddball factor to it so intriguing. It's just, there's just something about that Series 10 TARDIS team and how weird it is and how mismatched they are, but yet somehow they still work. Yeah. I don't know how it works. Like, by all accounts, it shouldn't, but it just does. And I think it might just be the chemistry that Capaldi has with these characters on screen. On top of that, the run of episodes, like I said, I think is very consistent. I like them. It does, in the first half, it does what Series 7 tries to do with the theme of the week, except it does it in a way that's not blockbuster or Hollywood. It does it in the way that classic Doctor Who did it, where it's an actual self-contained story with its own merits, not borrowed from a genre. It's borrowed from a concept. So like the emoji bots, or, you know, a fish under a lake, or, you know, a haunted house filled with, like, killer insects, or a space capitalist station that steals oxygen from you. It's great. And, like, you know, people are going to rag on Oxygen and be like, oh, it's just fucking shoving political ideas in it. Rewatch Oxygen, you'll notice that the plot actually is very well functioned, and because it's so well written, its ideas on its views on capitalism actually make sense because it's nuanced and it doesn't force it down your throat by trying to present people in that position as villains like Arachnids in the UK does. It explores the actual consequences of capitalism in a story. So I think it's justified. And then I think on rewatch...
Yeah, using the science fiction setting.
Yes. It's like classic Doctor Who and New Who, basically, is Series 10. And I think the episode on rewatch, ever since it broadcast, that I have grown to love the most is Extremis. I used to like it, but be a bit problematic on it. But when I rewatched it last, I fucking loved that episode. It was so good. And I think one of the reasons why is, not only do I buy into the whole Veritas and the monks and, like, the Doctor being blind, but also I think the thing that's aged really well for Series 10 for me is the story arc. And I love the way that Stephen Moffat subverts the story arc and does it in a way that's right, not wrong, like he did with Series 9, where he starts in the first half with the kind of arc that feels like the typical kind of arc where you've got, oh, there's this vault, and, you know, you want to know what's inside it. And it's like, oh, here we go again. It's like, you know, Bad Wolf for the 10th time. But then halfway through the series, it's revealed that the vault has the Master inside it. And then you find out why the Master is inside it. And then you get the Master's point of view on it. And it develops into this really complex character drama that really took me by surprise. And I think the reason why this ranks so high for me is because Series 10 is the most like Russell Moffat ever got. Because the characters feel real, the story arc is benefits the development of the characters, the exploration is complex, but it's not over the top. It's great. And, Empress of Mars, I actually quite enjoy now. Eaters of Light, I don't think is as bad as anyone says it is. I think it's just mediocre. And the finale, with the best portrayal of the Cybermen we've ever gotten on TV, and the return of John Sim, and then they use him to benefit Missy as a character, and you get that beautiful scene with the Doctor and the two Masters on the field. I do what I do because it's right, because it's decent. It's just phenomenal. I love it. I love Series 10. It has its flaws. It's not the greatest of all time, but for me, it is the best Moffat series by a country mile. And that's why it's my number 5.
Excellent.
Your number 5.
Series 2.
There we go. It's moved up. Yay.
Yeah. I still feel basically the same about it. The weakest of Russell's era. Do not like the romantic subplot. Do not. I repeat, I do not. In case you didn't get the message, I do not like the relationship between the Doctor and Rose.
Especially the beach scene, right?
Oh yeah, the beach scene. What a joy that is. I get why people like it. It just does not work for me. Some great episodes, but also some not so great ones that I really don't enjoy at all. An episode which makes me feel nauseous watching it, not because of the monster, but just because I don't know why. I can't enjoy it.
It's like vegetables when you're a child.
Yeah, I don't know. So the difference is I didn't grow up and find out that this was good for me.
Well, you will.
Nah, not gonna happen. Anyway. Series 2. Some really good episodes. Some really meh episodes. Don't like the romance subplot. Cybermen and Daleks go pew pew pew, and that's cool. That's my review of Series 2.
I mean, we've kind of gone over the entire thing with Jake, haven't we?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So, interesting to know, last time you did this list, it was below Series 5, so why have you changed it this time round?
Series 5, like you, in a rewatch, doesn't hold up as well. And Series 2 is more consistent, and I guess nostalgia just plays a factor into it, because overall I don't really like Series 2, but it's still strong, fun, serialized television. But it's my least favorite Tennant season, it's my least favorite Russell season, and when I'm watching it, when I get to that home stretch of the last sort of couple of episodes and the Christmas special, immediately I just get excited to watch Series 3. I do not think about the drama of the end of Series 2. I'm just thinking, oh, I could be watching Smith and Jones right now, and then I'm not, and I get sad because I'm not watching Smith and Jones and watching a whole binge of Series 3. So Series 2 is alright. I like it. It's moved up because Series 5 didn't hold up as well.
All right then. Well, we're both controversial now. Wow. Well, I'm not too different to you in terms of my ranking, but I am quite different in my opinion, because my number 4 is Series 2.
Fair enough.
I really like it, apart from the Idiot's Lantern. That's a piece of rotten hell. But I find the strong episodes to be brilliant. Girl in the Fireplace, Satan Pit Two-Parter, the finale, School Reunion. There's a lot of the stuff that a lot of people would consider mid-tier I really enjoy, like Tooth and Claw, for example. I love the Cybermen two-parter as well. And whilst, this is still the genesis of Tennant, and his development made him much more interesting later on, I still love his performance, and I still find him very fun to watch. And whilst I can recognize that in places the romance has flaws, I think David Tennant and Billie Piper's on-screen chemistry just makes it work for me. And I feel like it just doesn't have that bad taste in my mouth like it does for you, because I just really enjoy watching them together on screen. Except for the Eirich Stanton, like I said. But I did a review of Series 2 on Joey Morgan's channel recently, and one thing that I differed on with the others was that I really enjoy them in episodes like Tooth and Claw and Fear Her, whereas they don't.
They're great. Yeah. Yeah.
But
I don't actually mind.
I really like Series 2. One of the reasons why is because I really like the arc. I like the way they integrate Torchwood into the series, and how not only does their adventures end up being the inception of Torchwood in Tooth and Claw, but it's also what ends the series as well. So I like that element of it. I also like how it uses the same formula that people got into with Bad Wolf in Series 1, but then it's like Series 10, it subverts it in Army of Ghosts by revealing that Torchwood was not the Ark. The reveal was actually the Cybermen and the Daleks. That was different. It came within Torchwood, but it wasn't what Torchwood was, if that makes sense. I really like that switch. And for me, like Mickey Smith as well, I think he's one of the strongest elements. For me, one of the reasons why Series 2 is leaps and bounds above a lot of the Moffat series is because I love how Russell T Davies writes his characters, and how, you could say it's a bit soap opera-y, but the way he writes his characters is very complex, and it's very real. I mean, it's in some senses, it's a little bit dramatic, but it is closer to what I look for in a drama than a lot of the others. And yeah, for me, the overall episode quality, minus a few fillers, is very strong. And I just really like the arc. I like the character stuff, and the only other real sort of maybe criticism I have is that the structure is a little bit rushed. One of the reasons, obviously, being that there's a new Doctor out of nowhere, and also the fact that Russell T Davies managed to get the Christmas slot. Therefore, the Sycorax story, rather than that opening, they had to open it with New Earth, which felt like a bit of a weird opener to have. Didn't feel right. So the structure is a bit off, and yeah, it's a little bit inconsistent. But overall, I really like it as a piece of anthology Doctor Who media, and I just really like it. It's not like top tier for me, but I would say it like, you know how people, when they make tier lists, right? If I was making like a tier list of all the Doctor Who seasons, like including Classic Who as well, like there'd be like a whole bunch of my favorites that are in like S tier, whereas this would be like sort of near the top of A tier, where it's not quite top tier for me, but it has enough of what I love about this show in it for me to really like it. So yeah, that's why it's my number 4. What is your number 4?
I've been flipping it in my head, because on rewatching both really recently, admittedly, there is no distinction in the ranking for me. My 4 and my 3 could swap easily, but as it stands, my number 4 is Series 10.
Okay.
As you said, it's brilliant. The good stuff is fantastic. The arc, the seeming mystery box, is resolved halfway through. Extremis is brilliant. Yes, the ending of the Pyramid Trilogy is a bit disappointing. However, the finale is fan-fucking-tastic. I enjoy it more and more every time I watch it. Nardole is actually endearing in the series. Bill is a perfect companion and a brilliant comedic foil to both Nardole and the Doctor, Capaldi's Doctor. Missy is a great element in this series because they actually elevate her character beyond just, haha, I am evil, look at me with my umbrella. Clara is gone, so it feels so much fresher and more exciting, and there's this new lifeblood in it, and Moffat just clearly wanted to get it right when he left, and he did, and I absolutely adore it.
Mm-hmm. It's very consistent as well. It's very consistent.
That's the one.
Yeah, and one thing I forgot to mention though, Capaldi in Series 10 is amazing.
Oh god, yeah.
His Doctor is in Series 10. If we isolate Series 10 Capaldi, it's one of my favorite Doctors. His performance is extremely high quality.
I think we said that last time, is if Capaldi was written the way he is in Series 10 for all of his series, he'd probably be my favourite Doctor.
I remember I had the Jodie Whittaker Doctor in my head at the time because that was what was recent. And I was like, I remember watching and I was like, I think it was after Spyfall Part 1 when she was still having the character that she had in Series 11, and I'm like, there's just something, I was like thinking about a Doctor, and I'm like, I don't know what to really, like, I know I don't like this Doctor as much, but I don't know what's missing from her Doctor. I can't quite pinpoint it. And then I rewatched Series 10, and it all flooded back to me, like, what is missing from Jodie's Doctor? Because Capaldi in Series 10 is so brilliant. The character is so nuanced. The performance has so many layers and details to it. Like, the way he figures out problems is just, it's so fascinating. It's so fascinating to watch him do his thing. And, like, Series 10 just found a way to nail all the things that Moffat wanted to do with this Doctor from the start, but it just didn't quite work. And then in the third time round, he got it right. And it's like, it was just so satisfying to finally see it kick into gear, you know? Because I remember when I first met you, Series 10 hadn't come out yet. And we always said that we're like, Capaldi is a great actor, but he hasn't realized his potential, and we just don't know if he can ever do that. And then the fact that we got Series 10 and we saw him realize his potential as an actor and as the Doctor, it's just a very satisfying, experience, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would. He's perfect. He's absolutely perfect in Series 10.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Your number 3?
Okay. Now we get to the top 3, which are literally like hairs apart from each other for me. Like, they are so close. They are my top 3 of all time. They are the holy grail, the unbeaten trilogy of this show that I will cherish till I die, hopefully. My number 3 is Series 4.
Haha.
I love it. I rewatched a lot of episodes from it lately, and a lot of them went up in my mind. It's just so quality from start to finish. I mean, I suppose the Doctor's Daughter's not particularly good, but apart from that, I think it's just a magical ride from start to finish. It's so entertaining. I think you could probably say this is probably the most entertaining series of Doctor Who of all time. It's so fun.
I'd say so.
The 10th Doctor and Donna Noble have incredible chemistry, but not only that, the way they're characterized, the way this caps off all this character development we've gotten with Tennant, to where he finally found the person he'd been looking for, and then it's ripped away from him. And the fact that Donna finally found a purpose in life and it's ripped away from her, it's soul-crushing in the finale. It's so heartbreaking and sad. And I think,
especially for the companion who was the funniest. Obviously, humor is subjective, but her chemistry with David Tennant is unparalleled.
Yeah. And it's one of the very few instances where this show genuinely gets me emotional, like actually properly. The episodes are brilliant. Partners in Crime, Fires of Pompeii. Like, Fires of Pompeii I rewatched, and that is amazing. That is so good.
It's a belter.
Yeah.
It's great.
Planet of the Ood is like a dark classic Who story from like the 80s. It's amazing. Mm-hmm. The Library two-parter is one of the best of all time. Midnight is one of the best of all time. Turn Left is one of the best of all time.
It is the best of all time. I'd just like to correct a statement you just made. Midnight is the best of all time.
And the finale is it's like, you know, it's like our, you know, Avengers Doctor Who, you know. It's just so satisfying. And if you add on the specials on top of that, you've got The Waters of Mars, which is my favorite episode of New Who. And that, for me, ties in directly with Pfizer Pompeii and his entire arc with Donna, and just seeing the 10th Doctor broken down to the level where the Time Lord Victorious is unleashed is chilling, spine-chilling. Series 4's production values are off the charts. Like, the CGI got really, really high quality here. There's a lot of action scenes. It's very enjoyable. It is everything Series 7 wanted to be, with it being the blockbuster season that failed at doing. Series 4 succeeds and more. Series 4 is how you do blockbuster Doctor Who done right. And it's brilliant, and I love it. But it's not my number 1 or number 2, because it's slightly just hairs below the others. What's your number 3?
My number 3 is Series 1.
Yes.
Now, as I was saying, Series 10 has gone so high up in my estimation that it is on par with Series 1.
Wow.
Which is amazing. Because Series 1 is fantastic. Almost flawless television. In fact, I can't point to an episode and say, I don't like that one. I like them all. However, I mean, it set the template. We are sitting here because of this. The show is still going because of the success of this series, because of the brilliance of Christopher Eccleston's performance, the tenderness and ambition of Russell T Davies' writing, the vulnerability and yet incredible growth of Rose Tyler as a character, Jackie Tyler, Mickey Smith, Jack Harkness, the new TARDIS interior, the Murray Gold's music. All of it is firing on all cylinders, and it just made for spectacular television that still holds up today despite some of the more dated elements. It's still fantastic, and it has Dalek. So, there. I rest my case.
Yeah, you were going to say a but then I think you realised that there's actually no flaws.
No. I do have a reason why my other two are higher than it, though. But we'll
okay, we'll get to that. Does that mean it's time for my number 2?
Go for gold.
My number 2 is Series 3.
Yay.
The most underrated in the entire show.
100%.
There are no episodes that are below 7 out of 10. It is so bloody brilliant. It is so underrated. It has the most complex character arc in the entire show, and it's done brilliantly. It doesn't pull its punches. It goes all in to the point where we have discussed many times before, it pisses off people because there's a lot of people that don't like the subtext of the series because of what it does and what it represents. But I don't care, because I click with this storyline. I understand what it's all about. I understand why it's written the way it is. And I think it's bloody brilliant. I think this is some of the most interesting character development we've ever gotten for the Doctor and a companion in the entire show. On top of that, the Vote Saxon arc is the best of all time. It's not only teased like a bad wolf in the spin-offs, but it's also intricate. It's also made a part of the stories, like the Lazarus Experiment, like 42, like the Pocket Watch in Human Nature and the Family of Blood, when that comes back to Utopia, like Gridlock with You Are Not Alone, and how it all ties, and not only ties in terms of a plot, but it all ties together in terms of the characters as well. And how everything, like you said, when 16 months ago when you talked about Series 3, everything builds to a point to that brilliant, underrated finale Last of the Time Lords that is so much better than people say it is. I can't believe how much bloody hate it gets, because it's undeserved. It is so brilliant. Martha Jones is a brilliant companion. David Tennant is an absolutely brilliant Doctor, and is such a complex, interesting character that goes on a brilliant journey. At the very beginning, he is very much like he left off in Series 2, and by the end of the series, he's a completely different person. Going into Series 4, he feels older, he feels experienced, and in this series, we see the growing pains as they happen. Rather than them happening in between a series, Series 9, we see them on screen, in the flesh, full force. It's amazing. And
on top of all this, it introduced us to the blue suit.
Yes, it did. And also, it has a lovely story about Shakespeare. It has a very underrated Dalek two-parter that continues the Cult of Skaro arc and explores some very interesting ideas. And the second half of the series is the best run of episodes the show's ever had. From human nature to the end. It's brilliant. It's so good. So underrated. And it's like, grains of sand below being number one. I love it. Your number 2.
It's fantastic. My number 2 is Series 4. It's, for all the reasons you said, it's fantastic. It fires on all cylinders. It's the blockbuster season. There's all those emotional stakes. The reason it is above Series 1 for me is purely because it is more emotionally satisfying, because nothing will ever recreate that feeling of watching The Stolen Earth and Journey's End for the first time. And that was something special as a young kid watching that. And it still holds up today, despite how ludicrously big and over the top it is. It is still fantastic, and I absolutely adore Series 4. And it's only a notch above Series 1 and 10, but it just hits after hits after hits after hits. Yes, the Doctor's Daughter's average, but all the good stuff is just so good that it rises above that.
And it has your favourite episode of all time in it.
And it has my favourite episode of all time on it. Midnight. Midnight is fucking great.
Yep. And it's surrounded by 2 of the other greatest of all time.
Uh-huh. It's so good. Series 4 is insanely good.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yep. Does that mean it's time for my number 1?
It is time for your number 1.
My number 1 is, of course, Series 1. Now, like Series 3, there is no episode for me that goes below 7 out of 10, except for the fact that in Series 3, I apply that to the Lazarus Experiment and 42, whereas in Series 1, I only apply that to the long game, because the rest of it is all top tier for me. All of it. Every time I rewatch this series, it gets better. The subtext is rich. The way it introduces the show is awesome. The way the series is structured, every episode has a purpose. Every episode is positioned exactly where it needs to be to introduce the series in the perfect way. Christopher Eccleston, flawless Doctor. Absolutely flawless. One of the best of all time. Nothing to complain about him at all. He's everything you could possibly want and more within 13 episodes. It has my favourite series opener. It has my favourite series finale. It has... Rose is at her absolute best here. She is such an interesting character. So different from everything we'd ever had before. And the way it explores the consequences of her travelling with the Doctor and what impact that has on her people that live at home, like Jackie and Mickey. The exploration of her dead father in Father's Day is a very touching episode that, if you see the reaction on YouTube, I actually let out a genuine tear when I watched it. Aliens of London in World War III and Boomtown are severely underrated. The Slovene are completely misunderstood. They are a brilliant villain. I love them, and I love those stories, and they are awesome. And Dalek is one of the best of all time. The Empty Child and the Doctor Dances is one of the best of all time. Bad Wolf Parting the Ways is one of the best of all time. Father's Day is one of the best of all time. I don't know what more I need to say. It's my perfect series. It's flawless from start to finish. I love it. I love it. I love it. Number 1.
Excellent.
Your number 1.
My number 1. Drum roll. Exactly. It is series 3 because fuck y'all, it's great. It's so good. Every episode's good. Even Lazarus Experiment in 42. Then, not as of the caliber of everything else, but for the weakest episodes to still be ones that
the
I
character
enjoy.
drama in those episodes is better than a lot of other Doctor Who, I think.
Exactly. You get that phone call between Martha and her mother, whilst she's got to do all this, pub quiz, the deadly pub quiz stuff with all the sliding doors and that ridiculous episode. And the Lazarus Experiment is just this gross sort of big schlocky monster thing. It's harmless.
And it's played by Mark Gatiss.
It's played brilliantly by Mark Gatiss, and it all ties beautifully into the aging of the Laser Sonic in the finale story, and the whole thing tying with Mr. Saxon following Martha and her family. The Master already knows that who the Doctor is traveling with because in their future he's already met them.
And that ties into Smith and Jones when the Doctor does that to Martha in that episode.
Exactly, and everything is so deliberate. If there's, bloody hell, the Family of Blood 2-parter is impeccable.
Yep.
Paul Cornell is a genius. And then the finale, using all these little bits and pieces from the whole series, from the Lazarus Experiment, from the little bits and pieces of character drama from Martha and her mother in the first episode, in things like the Lazarus Experiment, to Martha's growth as a human being, from what she learns in the Shakespeare Code, and the Dalek 2-parter, and the Doctor constantly losing, and fucking Gridlock. It's so good. It's so good. It gets me excited every time I talk about it.
Yep.
Every time I watch it. It is so rewarding. It is brilliant. Brilliant television.
Also, Derek Jacobi and John Sim as the Master. Yep.
As you said, Derek Jacobi and John Sim as the Master in Utopia. Jesus Christ. Jack coming back and having his conversation with the Doctor, the face of Bo, Yana, all of it. Martha's arc is great, and people say, "Oh, Last of the Time Lords, it's just the big space Jesus." No, there's so much more going on in that, and Martha being the one to say, putting her foot down and saying, "No, this is me getting out," because it teaches the Doctor he cannot go on like this. He learns and grows from it, and Donna then humanizes him because he is lost after Martha, but Martha becomes much more powerful, which then ties into the few episodes of Torchwood that she is in, and then when she comes back in the finale of Series 4, she's grown as a character because Russell T Davies is a genius in planning these stories and making it naturally build towards a point. And yes, it's big, yes, it's bombastic, yes, it gets schlocky, but by God, it fucking earns it when it gets there. Series 3 is perfect television.
Also,
I adore it.
There's one episode we haven't mentioned, and that's Blink.
I mean, it's Blink. Probably the most famous episode of all of Doctor Who. So,
even the naysayers of Series 3 will admit that Blink is a masterpiece.
It is. Goddamn right. Alright, I've said my bit.
Yep.
Series 3 is great.
It is. Brilliant. And, yes, that's our ranking. Give us yours. And, I don't know what else to say. Hope you were entertained.
Yep.
It's
Stay safe.
It's our annual RTD tongue bath.
That's the one.
Though to be fair, that's every video. To be honest.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's our ranking. I hope you enjoyed it. Give us yours, and when this coronavirus isolation is over, we will be doing a reaction to the Faceless Ones, which is on the screen right now if you can't see it. So, when we finally are able to see each other again in person, we will do a reaction to the Faceless Ones, and I'm bloody looking forward to that, because I'm pretty sure you haven't seen it, have you?
I don't think so.
Yep, and Just you wait, boy. Just you wait. It's a great story. Anyway, we will see you all next time for whatever video comes out.